What's up, gamers? Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun because I spent 4 years doing an English degree and I read a lot of books for that degree. So I thought it would be fun to do a little tier list to rank some of them. My disclaimer for this video, though, is I was using Goodreads to track things while I read books in undergrad. However, I just wanted to do a disclaimer. For my English degree, I did take a lot of classes that weren't just novel focused. They were also poetry focused or play focused, or we would talk about like nonfiction stuff, like people's letters or their journal diaries, etc. So this is just going to be novels. So if you're looking at this and you're like, this was all you read for 4 years. No, this was not all I read for 4 years. I also took a lot of non-English classes as well. And we would read stuff in some of those. Like if I took writing classes, that's not everything I read. I also read a lot of like nonfiction, like obviously like essay articles and stuff. You do a lot of theory and everything I read as well. So this is just going to be novels, and it's just stuff I read for English. Let's get into it. So the first book is 1984. And this one I read in a British-Irish literature class. So many things come from 1984. I feel like you know what 1984 is, and you don't need me to explain it to you. But this book, honestly, it was a little scary. I did read, I think it was the end of a chapter or the end of a part, and the ending genuinely stressed me out so much. And then I had to go to bed after, and I could not sleep for like 2 hours after. Even though 1984 was stressful and it was awful, and there's real life connotations to things and totalitarianism going on right now, I would say it gets a big enjoy from me. It was such an interesting book. The next book is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was something I read in first year, and if you don't know what Frankenstein is about, it's about Victor Frankenstein, who is the Frankenstein in question. Frankenstein is not the monster, guys. Let's be real here. We got to get this together. That was a joke, by the way. Sort of. And Frankenstein is basically about this guy named Victor Frankenstein who decides to play God a little bit, and he creates this being. He creates this being from a bunch of, basically sews this guy together, and the being starts to learn about the world, and it has unintended consequences for everyone. Frankenstein gets the goat from me. It's one of the goats. I think for a while, I considered this to be the best book I read for my degree, or my favorite book I read for my degree. I did end up having to audiobook it for a bit because during, I think, reading break, I was a little bit stressed and I was not going outside a lot. So I did decide to audiobook this to kind of help myself read it and also not just stay inside. So I ended up LibriVoxing it. If you don't know what LibriVox is, it's a website that just has a lot of recordings of material that is now in the public domain. And it's great. If you want if you want to start with classics, but reading them physically feels daunting to you, LibriVox is a good place to start because it's got like audio recordings of a lot of stuff. So yeah, I LibriVoxed Frankenstein for the most part, and I was like, honestly, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the conversations we had about, I don't know, just playing God and like this thing coming into being, and is like having these relationships with people, and then it's only once they see him that they start to fear him. I just thought there were some interesting kind of perspectives on othering and, potentially disability as well. So yeah, Frankenstein is one of the goats that I read during my degree. Next book is Looking for Alaska by John Green, which I read for a young adult fiction class. And okay, here's the thing. I read Looking for Alaska the first time when I was 11 years old, which may be a little young to read Looking for Alaska, but I digress. And when I read Looking for Alaska the first time at 11 years old, I really enjoyed it. I would think about it all the time. I found the impact of everything so meaningful. I found the before and after so impactful that I actually started writing a fan fiction when I was like 12 or 13. That was going to be a before and after something happened, kind of like it was fully inspired by Looking for Alaska. I had never seen something be like before and after before, and I just thought that the countdown to this event and you don't know what's going to happen. I loved it at the time, and honestly still do. I think it's such a fun way of structuring a book, of dealing with the consequences of an action that happens. So it definitely made an impact on me at age 11. However, I'm sorry to say, reading it however long later, like a decade later for my degree, it was tough to see that a book that I loved so dearly at the time, I didn't love it anymore. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if it's just YA isn't doing it for me anymore. I do think that is a big thing because some of the other books in here that are also going to be in this tier, spoiler alert, they were also for that kind of YA class. And I'm sorry. I did enjoy the class a lot and I enjoyed the conversations from the class, but I think the books themselves, I'm just like, I know good YA is out there, but I think just the genre, I think I'm getting to a point now where I'm old enough that it's hard for a YA book to be like a favorite for me. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's good for teenagers to have books that are more tailored towards them. Not to say that adults can't enjoy YA, but I think just where the stage I'm at, I'm like, you know what? This is something I enjoyed a lot as a kid, a lot when I was, a teenager or preteen. And I think it's okay that I don't enjoy it to the same level anymore. So the next book on the list is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And this was also for the British Irish Literature class that 1984 was for. And The Remains of the Day is about a butler who is getting older and his original master is also like not around anymore, and so the ownership of the manor that he works at is gone to someone else who's not quite as engaged in like the British butler culture, and so he's kind of losing his purpose, and his employer suggests that he go for a vacation or something after he kind of starts making mistakes and he's not all with it, and he ends up going on this trip to see one of his old colleagues who he kind of always had these unrealized or unacted upon feelings for, and things go from there. This book, it talks a lot about dignity. It talks a lot about getting older and what happens when a profession that you dedicated yourself to, you're starting to realize that it's almost rejecting you, or you can't do that profession in the same way anymore when you've dedicated your whole life to it. And the complicated feelings that arise with realizing you might have, spent time dedicating yourself to something that does not love you back, and eventually you can't do it anymore. What's funny about this is that I actually thought about doing a books as NHL storylines or narratives video, and this one, I was like, it's giving such like the Penguins trio of like players that are getting older, especially like Sidney Crosby. I was like, these vibes, I'm getting kind of Sidney Crosby, even though he's like still a peak player. Whatever, I'm gonna stop talking about it. The Remains of the Day, I'm going to put it in big enjoy. I think if I was kind of letting myself get into it at the start on my own, it could have been a GOAT. I feel like such a fucking idiot saying it could have been a GOAT. I think it could have been up there like a 5-star, but I think because of the situation of like, I was very pressed for time when I was starting it out, and I was kind of like, okay, let's get this book done. But the ending really stuck with me. I like thought about it a lot after I finished it. Next book on the list is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Beloved is about a woman named Setha who has escaped from her slave master, and she's kind of built a life for herself in this community of, other, escaped slaves and other kind of like, African Americans, and they're all in this community together and they're all supporting each other. And then this kind of spirit starts coming back to almost like haunt Setha, haunt the family. Beloved, one of the GOATs. 100% one of the GOATs. What a book. Oh my gosh. I will say some of these books come with content warnings, so I would recommend like looking at them if you're susceptible to certain things. Next up, we have Swamp Angel by Ethel Wilson. This book is about a woman named Maggie who is basically, she leaves her husband and she goes away and lives out her days in like elsewhere in BC. This was a literature of BC class. It makes sense that I had to read it for this, and I will say I did DNF this because of timing. Every semester I have a class that kind of is the one that's got to give. In the semester I took that class in, I think I got like halfway through 2 of the books. One of them, the other one I got halfway through, isn't a novel, which is why it's not here. And then I was able to finish reading the third one because it was like a creative nonfiction. But this one, I wasn't minding it. I was enjoying it. I was really struggling with motivation that semester, and this class was kind of the one that kept on giving. I do want to read it at some point. I do want to do like a video that is like reading the books that I DNF'd in undergrad, but specifically like the ones I DNF for timing rather than derogatory. Though, who knows, maybe I'll do a video of those too. Next up is A Complicated Kindness by Miriam Taves. This book is about Nomi, who is in a Mennonite community, I think in Winnipeg. Or is it General Manitoba or is it Winnipeg? I can't remember. And basically, she's in this Mennonite community and her mom has left her. Her sister has left. It's just her and her dad, and she kind of starts to experience the pressures that come with living in such a tight-knit, I guess, religious community. And she starts to feel the pressure being a teenager and coming of age with all these issues that have happened in her life. And I would put this, it's either solid or big in joy. I struggled to get into it a bit and I was a bit behind in my reading for it, but I think by the time I got into it, I think I might big enjoy. I think it's lived enough of like I think about it every so often, and I think that is enough to kind of push it to a big enjoy for me. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as these two, but I feel like it feels better than some of the books I read that were solid, but also I might end up changing my mind actually. Let me see what else is on here. I might move it down. But like that's like keep it looking at this, watch the rest of this video with the knowledge that I could move this up if I wanted to, but it doesn't, the vibes aren't quite there. So I'm going to put it at solid for now, and I might change my mind. Next book on the list is Jane Eyre. This I read for, it was a year-long like seminar, like very like focused English literature and theory seminar. And I did end up having to audiobook this for a section because my copy, the text was kind of small and I was feeling really unmotivated to read it. And I felt very discouraged when I would spend like 20 minutes reading it and only like a few pages would go by. And I think I just wasn't as used to reading classics back then, because this was pretty early on in English. In my degree, I read this book. Gets a big enjoy for me. I do want to reread it this year because I think I would enjoy it even like so much more. I think at the time I was kind of struggling to get into it because I wasn't as used to reading classics. Now I'm like, oh, I want to eat that shit up. Next up, Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad. This is not goon in that way, guys, I promise. I hate that I compare stories that follow like characters that have related narratives or they overlap with each other. I hate that I like always refer to them as Love Actually type books, but this is a Love Actually type book where there's different chapters following different characters and they all like know each other somehow. The main two I would say are like Sasha and Benny are these two characters, and Sasha works for Benny, who's like a big music industry executive, and it kind of follows these people in their lives. I feel like it's a very like character kind of theme focused read as opposed to big plot focused read, because things also jump around in time. It's weird because I would probably put this, like, I think this was more of a solid read for me. But I also did my thesis on it. Part of my thesis was talking about a character from this book. So I feel like I should put it to big enjoy just because it impacted me enough for me to like constantly think about this character, and I did my thesis on it. But like overall, I don't know if it was actually like a big enjoy book. I think it was more mid, or not mid. I think it was more just like, I was like, that was a solid read and it impacted me. So yeah, that's A Visit from the Goon Squad. Next up, we have Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. I read this twice for my degree. I read it in first year as like a survey course, and then I read it towards the end in the same coming of age novels course. Monkey Beach, the first time I read it, it would probably be more of like a solid to big enjoy. The second time I read it, it's one of the goats. I cried reading the end of Monkey Beach, and I don't know, I think just things in my life had developed from first year. Obviously, you grow a lot when you're in university. It makes sense. But things developed a lot for my first year. Relationships with people in my life developed a lot for my first year. And I think just all of that in the background. Oh my God, I'm an idiot. This isn't Jane Eyre. This is Adam Beatty. Guys, I'm sorry. These covers aren't the same as the ones I own. Some of them aren't the same as the ones I own. And I saw like, it's also hard to read, and I saw 4 letters and assumed, oh, that's Jane Eyre. I'm actually an idiot. That's Adam Beatty. This is Jane Eyre. Guys, I'm sorry. Ignore that. So Monkey Beach is about Lisa Marie, who is from the Haisla community in what we know as Kitimat, BC. So she's an Indigenous woman. For those who aren't familiar with the book and with Eden Robinson, which I figure is probably, if you're not Canadian or you're not from the West Coast, you might not be as familiar. So this book, it just follows Lisa Marie. It's also a coming of age novel. First time I read this, I ended up actually not finishing it until a few weeks after I was done with the semester, because I just was not feeling great mentally at the time. But the second time I read it, it impacted me way, way more. For anyone who doesn't know about like the history of Indigenous people in Canada, residential schools, the mistreatment of Indigenous people in Canada even after residential schools closed, which didn't happen until like 1996, 1997 was when the last one completely closed, which isn't that long ago. I would recommend looking into it. Each kind of section of the story follows her relationship with one of her family members that like strongly impacts her. It's also kind of, the chapters will be kind of interspersed with discussions of her Haisla culture or like Haisla beliefs and stuff like that. I think just the ending really impacted me this go around. And so that one, I was like, yeah, I think this is one of my favorite books and reading experiences I've had for my degree. Next book is actual like Adam Beatty this time, by George Eliot. There we go. That's why I was going to try and explain this better, but I'm just going to go with, it follows kind of Adam Beatty, who's a carpenter, but then there's also some like, from what I remember, our main discussions kind of looked at how the women were portrayed in this, which makes sense if it's written by George Eliot. But genuinely, I found this book so dense and so boring, and I found out what happens at the end of it during class, and I was like, this book is crazy. Why is this book so boring? And then the most insane thing is happening at the end of class. Anyway, I digress. I didn't finish it. And it was in a derogatory way. It wasn't because of timing. Next book on this list is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This one also gets a big enjoy. This book is about Kathy H., who you don't fully know what's going on, but she's kind of this like carer at this facility. She basically starts kind of talking about her life growing up at this kind of like school location and her friends, Ruth and Tommy. I don't want to say what they are or what's going on, because I feel like that's one of the things about reading this that is kind of like, you don't want to go in knowing too much. I really enjoyed it. Initially, I was a bit slow getting into it again, but I think by the end, I was like, damn, that was kind of crazy. And I'm just like sad here. And I do think about it. It just really brings hope, and it brings these like discussions of autonomy and your worth as a person and what you deserve. And it's a good read. Next book on this list is Amsterdam by Ian McEwan. This book is about these two guys, and I don't remember their names. I think one of them is named Clive. I don't remember the name of the other one. It's these two guys who kind of have this thing going, not in like a fruity way, but in like a, oh, they're kind of friends, but then they kind of become enemies way. Honestly, the reason why I'm not explaining this very well is because it's in one of these two categories. I was really not, I'm going to put it in mid just because the one book that I have in mind for this category, oh, it's like truly, truly diabolical. But Ian McEwan's Amsterdam gets a mid from me. I just found I was so bored. I didn't fully get some of what was going on. I don't know. By the end, I was like, yeah, okay. Sure. I do want to read Atonement, though. I've heard good things about Atonement, and I've heard good things about the movie for Atonement. So I do want to read it at some point. But I wasn't very impressed by Amsterdam. I think it was probably like my least favorite thing we read for that class. Next up is Be My Love by Kit Pearson, which is another like very BC local book that I read for a class. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry to the YA community, because this was another class or another book that I read for that YA class, and I did not like it. It wasn't that I didn't like it. I finished it and I thought it was, there was elements to it where I was like, oh, this is sweet. This is a good YA book. But again, I think I'm just at an age where YA just doesn't hit the same way. But I still enjoy it. And I thought it was cool reading kind of like more local books and stuff like that. Like just hearing place names and be like, oh, that's like a place that I have visited or I know about from just living in BC and stuff like that. So I think it's always good to read local books. And this isn't like a knock to this book by any means. I thought it was still fun and it was still a good read. I think I'm just like at an age where I think the writing level, because it is like still YA and it's targeted towards that audience, I didn't enjoy it as much. Next up is Castle Rackrent by Maria Edgeworth. I think it was Mariah. This one is another DNF because of timing, and I genuinely, I think, only read like 5 pages of it. When I say a DNF because of timing, I was like, I barely started even. If I'm not mistaken, this was kind of about a manor, an English-owned manor in Ireland. I could be completely wrong though, but it talks on, like some of the Irish English dynamics and like Irish kind of nationalism and stuff like that. If I remember correctly. Again, I didn't read it. I don't know. Next book on the list is In the Forest by Edna O'Brien, which is a British Irish literature class book. This one, it's going to go in solid. This book goes in solid because this book was kind of harrowing. I really enjoyed it though, but it was kind of harrowing. It's about this kid who grows up in this community, and the community kind of just ignores that he's kind of a festering issue. Like the community just ignores the fact that he exists, and there's some like kind of abuse going on towards him, and he's like kind of a troubled kid. And it all comes to a head when this girl moves in with her son to the community, and some stuff goes down. This isn't a happy book by any means, but it was a good read in the sense where I was like, this is an interesting book to read and it's an important book to read. But I just felt that it's a bit of a tough read in that way, because it talks about a lot about like the kind of like community life and kind of ignoring the problems that are there in order to kind of maintain calmness and surface level peace of the community when there are deeper things going on. Next book on the list is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, which is another solid for me. I enjoyed this. It's about him and his brother Derry, who kind of becomes his guardian after his parents pass away, and then the other brother is Soda Pop. There's a fight that happens. There's some like unforeseen consequences to things. It's just a classic, and the movie's good too. It's got all your favorite stars when they were like, starting out in their careers and everything. I enjoyed it. Next on the list, The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. Again, this was like a thesis prep read because I was talking about one of the characters in this book for some of my thesis. It just carries on from the previous one. It's kind of just more of that like interconnected narrative of just like all these different characters are being followed, and it really explores the themes of like technology. There's a technology that exists that allows you to upload your memories to the cloud, and you can see other people's memories, but only if you allow your memories to be seen by others as well. And it leads to some interesting discussions. I'm kind of flying through the next few of these because I have to go soon. Baby Drag Queen by C.A. Tanaka. I don't know. It was a book. It was a YA book. It was another kind of like more like local like BC author book. It was all right. I finished it was a quick read though. I read it in like a day and I was like, that's great. I finished my reading for today. That's good. Next up is A Catcher in the Rye. This kind of controversial because I actually did enjoy it. Like I found it solid. Holden is annoying, but I also am like, I feel bad for him. I don't know. I also found it interesting that we didn't, I don't know where it would have come up in our class discussion, but in our class where we read this, no one brought up the fact that the guy who killed John Lennon like was obsessed with The Catcher in the Rye, and he like had a copy. I think that he like signed and put somewhere the day that he killed John Lennon, which I was like, okay, all right. I don't think Holden was that bad. Next up, Station 11. That gets goat conversation for me. Station 11 is about the outbreak of a pandemic. Things just kind of progress from there. It's about a pandemic that went a lot worse than the pandemic that we experienced a few years ago. There's like a cult following in it. There's a traveling Shakespeare troupe. There's an airport that becomes a safe haven for people. Next up, The Death of the Heart by Elizabeth Bowen. That was a DNF because of timing as well. I do want to read that one as well though. This is one that like if I were to do a video reading the ones that I read I didn't get to read in undergrad, it would be these two, and also one more that's on this list. Next up, Judy Blume's Forever. Again, kind of mid YA story. I had read it before, and I think it hits a lot harder when you read it when you are younger and you're going through some of the stuff like mentally of like growing up and the way that like some people's, I don't know, like you start trying to think about life and growing up and being like things are going to be like this forever, and they're not like this forever, but that's also okay. Next up, I think this is L'Amour d'Arthur. This was another DNF because of timing. I think I read the first 25 pages and it took me an hour, and I was like, I do not have time for this. I've read everything else for this class. I'm just going to talk about that for the final exam and just not reference anything to do with L'Amour d'Arthur. But it's a classic. It's like, I love a good Arthurian legend, so I do want to read it at some point. Next up is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I'm sorry, guys. It did go into DNF because of timing. Mrs. Dalloway and The Death of the Heart were for the same class, and that class was just like a bit of a messy class, and that was the class that gave that semester. And I'm sorry to say it, I do really want to read Mrs. Dalloway as well. That's the other one that I'm referred to when I said the ones in the list that I would want to read most. It's like The Death of the Heart, Mrs. Dalloway, also kind of L'Amour d'Arthur as well. Washington Black, another one that I DNF because of timing. There's another one that I do actually want to get to and like restart from the beginning. I think I got like 200 or 150 pages in, and it didn't take that long. Like, it was a quick read, but it was just like there was a period of time where we were kind of talking about different novels weekly for one of my classes, and it was a lot of reading, and I did try and read some stuff during like the break that was before that, but I just didn't get to that one. Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, I think is her name. This one gets a solid from me. Honestly, kind of harrowing. It makes me feel icky to think about some of the stuff that happens in this book. This is about a girl named Sylvie who, her dad is like he lives like he's in old England. This group of university students comes to like kind of see how, I guess, people in old England would have lived, or some of the stuff that they would have, like some of the techniques they would have employed to live. You also see like the way that Sylvie gets treated by the family. It's a bit of an icky read, but it's also a quick one. Next on the list is The Marrow Thieves by Cherry Dimeline or Dimeline. People say Dimeline. I would naturally want to say Dimeline, but I think I'm wrong. This book, it was another YA book, and I think I enjoyed it less than the ones that are up here, and it's on this kind of tier for me. It was a speculative fiction book, and it's basically about settlers who start trying to hunt and harvest indigenous people for their bone marrow, because settlers have lost the ability to dream. Their way of getting back their ability to dream is to harvest the bone marrow of indigenous communities. It's a very interesting read. I would say out of the ones here, I think this is the one that I enjoyed the most, but it's not quite on the solid line for me, if that makes sense. Next up, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do it. I had to take a quiz on this book. I swear I read the book. I don't remember anything except for like the very beginning and the very end. And I know that people kind of say that is the vibe when you read this book, and it makes sense. Like, people will be like, oh yeah, like it's just the whole point is that the violence is so rampant that you don't even know what you're reading because it's just all the same thing and so much violence. And I'm like, that's great and all. Not great in that way, but like I get where you're coming from. However, like I would try so hard to pay attention to this book, and it was a situation where I was like, I have a deadline to read this, and I would read paragraphs or pages and be like, I don't know anything I just read. I cannot tell you what just happened. And I don't even think it was a overload of violence thing. I just could not keep paying attention to this book. Like, someone brought up in class, apparently there's a bit where they look out at the Pacific Ocean. They're like, wow, there's no more land left to conquer. And I was like, that happened in this book? That was a bit that happened in this book. I don't remember that at all. So yeah, I'm sorry. This is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, by the way. I do want to read The Road still. But I'm just like, I'm sorry. Blood Meridian was not my cup of tea. Like, I thought the beginning, I was kind of hooked. I was intrigued. The ending, harrowing. Oh my God. I will say, having read this, I do like seeing the memes about Judge Holden, because he's just like the Antichrist. Let me see if I can find that meme. God, his face. This is the photo of him that scares the shit out of me. Yeah, if you want to see what's going on here, he's so awful. I am so yeah. Look at this. Genuinely the worst. Yeah, and he's so fucking scary. Genuinely, I do understand when people will be like, yeah, the worst. This villain, and then it's just that photo. I get why people do that, and I do enjoy being able to understand why people do that, but holy fuck, that book, it just went over my head. Next up is E.L. Doctorow's The Book of Daniel. This, I don't know if it's in GOAT conversation for me. It is a big enjoy though. I was so shocked to enjoy this because I started reading it and I was like, what are we doing here? And it's kind of like very historiography, like very interpreting the past, like taking the past and kind of interpreting it to Daniel's own life. It's basically a fictional account of the Rosenbergs, and it basically is Daniel's experience being the child of the book's fictionalized account of the Rosenbergs. So basically his parents have been executed for allegedly being communist sympathizers and sharing, secrets with the Soviets. So his parents are executed, and it's basically about him and his sister growing up in such a shit situation. And also Daniel's kind of a menace. Yeah, he kind of sucks, especially to his wife. Oh my gosh, this man has a wife and he's so mean to her. Anyways, it was such an interesting book though. I would recommend if you're into like American lit. If you're into sections that just break down like, oh yeah, like this is how people interpret the past and this is how people put their lens on the past, and like this is like a leftist reading of something. This is like people taking the past and automatically saying that, like Marxists looking at the past and saying it's about, the struggle of class. It's all about class struggle and everything. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. Next up, Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed. This was another book I was so confused because it is like mumbo jumbo. It is kind of like, sorry, my voice is starting to go. It was a whole mix of like genre and just like narrative. I don't know if I can say clearly what this was about, but it was a solid read. I did enjoy it, even though I was so lost. Next up, Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This is another solid. I read this and I was like, damn, that poor horse. I don't know what else to say about it. This was for like a children's, like a Victorian kind of children's literature class, which is why I had to read it. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll gets a big enjoy from me. Rogue Mail by, what the fuck is this guy's name? Jeffrey Household. Rogue Mail by Jeffrey Household was like, I was shocked to enjoy it as much as I did, but it was all right. And then The Jungle Books is another one that I DNF'd derogatory. So there we go. This is 36 books that I read for my undergrad in a tier list. I wasn't expecting so many of them to be solid, which I guess makes sense. I feel like you read books when they're a lot of the time when books are required reading, you read that and you're like, that's a book I read. I didn't hate it. And that's how kind of I felt with a lot of these. So yeah, my GOAT conversation, which I just want to say, all female writers, by the way. No man is my GOAT. So yeah, we have Frankenstein, Beloved, Monkey Beach, and Station 11 were my favorite books that I read in my degree. So yeah, I guess if you wanted to see like a kind of reading list of the books someone read for their degree, there's the potential that I am missing one or two books that were on my reading list that I just didn't track on Goodreads because I didn't read them. Once again, there were some entire classes I took in undergrad that were on plays. There were some classes in undergrad where we did a mix of novels and plays, or a mix of fiction and nonfiction, and I only had to read one novel for that class and everything else was nonfiction. But yeah, so that's everything from me today. If you want to like the video, give it a like. If you want to comment, you can comment. And if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe. So yeah, take care. Have a good rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this. I hope that the rest of the year is kind to you and to me as well. We're in this together. All right. Thanks. Bye.